Hello and welcome. This is Chala, Dincoy, CEO and founder of The Repositioning Expert. You are here watching us with Mike Lander and myself at another episode of Naked Marketing. You may notice that he's not naked and neither am I, but we are going to get honest about his marketing mistakes. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Chala. It's been a real pleasure to join you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and you might notice from his accent, dare I say, is Cockney? Is it Cockney?
Well, no, actually, I'm a strange mixture. I'm a mixture of from the north of England and also from London for 20 years. So yeah, I've got a strange mixture of accents.
Oh my God. And is Cockney in the south or the north?
So Cockney's in the east of London.
Oh my God. I can't. And does it still exist?
Yeah, so Cockney is a kind of like I think it's called a dialect, I think. Yeah, so you still get people that are true Cockneys. In fact, I think to be a Cockney, you have to be born within the sound of Bow Bells.
Oh my God. Wow. So
otherwise you're not a true Cockney.
No, exactly. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly. And so you guys might have guessed he's from the UK and he's joining us is it 6 hours later or 7 hours later?
Yeah, 6 p.m. now. Yeah.
Okay. Very nice. Well, tell us what you do for a living, Mike, over there.
Yeah, so what I do now is I work with marketing agencies, IT services companies, recruitment agencies, outsourcing companies, and I specialize in helping them negotiate better deals when they meet big clients. So typical scenario, Chala, is, a company is 10, 20, 30 million turnover. They're selling into big brands, big global brands, and they're trying to sell a big deal. This is a $500,000 deal. And all of a sudden they meet these strange people called procurement. Mm-hmm. And these strange people called procurement are professional negotiators. I was an ex-procurement director, so I was on the buy side. So they meet people like me, and we behave differently. We want different things, and we are part of the stakeholder management that you need to do. And I say proactively engage procurement people, don't avoid them. So I now teach people how to engage with people like me, having been a buyer. My unique difference is I've been a buyer at some scale. So people like talking to me because it's like talking to the buyer.
That's right. Are you allowed to say where you were a buyer?
Not really, no. Several organizations. One was now $1 billion valuation company, often private equity backed. So I specialized in private equity backed companies that were on a very high growth trajectory to get from X to Y. And that typically was a 2 or 3 times valuation over 3 to 5 years. And therefore driving EBITDA improvement was all important. And what I did as a specialist was we drove EBITDA improvement. So we drive profitability improvement as procurement people. And hence we're the nasty people that try and reduce your price as a service provider, increase your scope, increase the targets, and squeeze the pips as far as we can.
Lovely. Just lovely. Well, I used to do, I was not the nasty guy like you. I worked for Pepsi, Pizza Hut, Frito-Lay. I was always on the buying side because I was the marketing girl, but we also had one of you. And
exactly.
He was like in the background, right? And so exactly. Right? So, I always say I spent 18 years saying no to people, and you're just like one step even further than that. So I don't
exactly.
My hats off to you. If anybody knows how to get around that, it's you. Awesome.
And there is a more balanced view of procurement about how we operate, but there are about 6 dimensions, which on another talk sometime we can talk about. But
Sure, for sure. Now, it's really interesting to me how you get clients and how you market yourself, because first of all, what you do is super, 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 very specific. And 2, it's not anybody that you can go on any social media and find. You're talking to really high level decision makers. So tell me about your biggest marketing mistake that you encountered while trying to get clients for this.
So for this, because I started this formally about 2 years ago, probably. And having come off the back of being a procurement director and buying companies and selling companies, and we can talk about that in a second as well. And when I started out, I made a classic mistake. You'd have thought I'm now 56. You'd have thought after my, 10th company, you wouldn't make the same mistakes again, but we do. And it's lack of focus. I'm effectively a company of one with some associates that work with me. So when I've got more work than I can cope with, then I bring in associates, and I'll scale it that way going forward. And the biggest problem that people like me face when they start their companies is you need to focus on a super niche. So a niche within a niche. A guy called Pat Flynn, who's in the States, I think, he's a podcaster. SPI is his business. And he talks about an inch wide and a mile deep. And he's absolutely right. I think what entrepreneurs often forget when they're marketing themselves as a early stage company, less than $1 million of revenue, is they tend to be buying from the founder. It might be one or two people, but they're buying the expertise of those limited number of people that found that business. And what they're looking for as a client is very, very deep expertise, really deep expertise in a very particular niche where you solve a very particular problem and it's a real pain point. And I think if you haven't got that, it's really hard to grow your business. In fact, I would say you might get lucky, but it's very, very difficult to grow it sustainably.
And, I'm loving everything you're saying. I'm all over it because that's what I do for a living. People pay me to find their super niche. So
perfect.
I'm curious, how did you find yours? Now, some people fall into it. And as you said, they're lucky enough to fall into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just curious, how did you find it?
So if I look back at the last kind of couple of years about how have I niched down, and my website needs updating because it needs to be even more niche. But what happened was, as always, the best feedback you ever get is from your customers or the prospects that don't work with you because you haven't niched. And what happened was, in the last probably 15 months, I'd say, I really found a couple of things really important. First of all, there was a sector angle. I've always believed sector focus is really important because back in the day when I was at KPMG, I was a management consultant at KPMG. We sold big jobs to huge global corporates. And, one of the kind of things that we were taught was you need to be a thought leader. So you need to be a trusted advisor. And the other thing that you found out really quickly was you had to understand your client's sector. If you don't understand your client's sector and you walk in as a consultant or as a trainer or as a facilitator or as a marketer, whatever it is, and you don't understand their language and the context and the issues that sector faces and how it's different, you'll get spat out. So you need to have this, what I call a kind of a crosshair. You need to have functional expertise, an expert in your domain, and a sector expertise. You've worked in that sector. So for example, I worked a lot in recruitment outsourcing, where basically big brands would outsource their recruitment to a third party. So I knew recruitment really, really well, and I know procurement really, really well. So that's a crosshair. And you can market into that crosshair because there's a very specific set of needs and problems, and I've got a very particular set of insights. The same for marketing agencies. I do a lot of work with marketing agencies. Why? I'm the chairman of a marketing agency. I've worked with a whole number of different agencies. I know how they speak. I know what their issues are. I know what their cultural differences are. And I've got this negotiating and procurement expertise. So again, it's a crosshair. And you've got to find those crosshairs.
I love it. Well, I mean, the only thing that I have to add to what you're saying is what you're doing is we're using as the scientist's hypothesis. And then what we're doing is we're going out into the market and we're actually asking prospects and people who said no to us, just like you did. We're literally asking the horse's mouth, is pain A, pain B, or pain C more expensive for you? And would you want us to solve that? And then numbers don't lie and the market doesn't lie. And you don't have to be guessing for years, throwing spaghetti at the wall. So I love everything you're saying. We are 100% aligned. Oh my God.
Excellent.
So, did you
one other thing, Chala, just an idea as well, just something else into the equation, which is that's kind of thoughts triggered. Pricing, what's one of the biggest problems in marketing is pricing. How do you know how to price your service? And so as it happens, as I do negotiation skills, training and coaching, what's one of the biggest problems that most salespeople face when they're selling an organization? The problem is they don't know what the business case looks like on the buyer's side. So they're selling a service, but unless they know what the size of the prize is, as I'd call it, for solving that problem, you can't do value-based pricing. So you don't know if your price is way too high or way too low. depending upon what problem you're trying to solve. And so I think, again, something else that I've come to is this kind of value-based pricing, which Blair Enns talks about a lot, obviously, and has written books on it. You've got to understand, I always think there's got to be at least a 5x value return, and ideally a 10x. 10x is great. So if I sell something for $30,000 and I can at least show directionally where $300,000 of gross profit is going to come from, at least I've got a starting point to a conversation. What's your views on value-based pricing and marketing? What are your thoughts on that?
It's changed so much. And you know why? Because I met a man who became my coach, who quadrupled my price overnight without changing anything. And I always thought, and so I teach the same thing in my sales conversation is we size up the cost of the problem so that we can comparatively 5x, 10x our
exactly.
Right? Yeah, that's fine. But what I've learned in pricing is that it's all about the brand. That's why I drive a BMW, and a Toyota is just never going to cut it. And there's no way that you can. So it's all about the brand, right? So that's what my coach taught me, is that I'm the same product, I'm the same brand, but when they do consumer testing with psychology, and they white label the same bottle of wine, and they just change the price, and they put electrodes to the brain to see which pleasure centers light up more with the cheaper wine or the more expensive wine. And the more expensive wine, everything lights up, right? And it's the same bloody wine. So that's what I found, is when I quadrupled my prices as a consultant, I had way more buy-in, I had way more implementation, way more accountability. And of course, I got much better results from those clients versus anybody who wasn't. So I no longer, I grew up, I studied business. I don't know if you have a finance background, but it was supply and demand, right?
Correct.
And it's totally BS in this world, because it's all about perception. And so, how you can show them the 5, 10x value. It's true, but it's so different if you're a BMW doing that versus a Toyota doing that.
Exactly.
I always say nobody will say no to a meeting with Oprah. It doesn't matter what she's selling. So that's what I'm trying to do. And the same thing with the price. Nobody will say no to that price if they think it comes from Oprah.
And they're going to get the value from it. I think, it is perception, definitely. And it is about the value they're going to get from that investment. And it's about anchoring. Again, a negotiation tactic, kind of negotiation 101, is price anchoring. When you go in and you start talking to a client, you will anchor high. People drift around price anchors by about 10 to 20%, roughly, depending upon what the scope of the service is and what the return is. So if you anchor too low at the beginning, you'll never get that back. You can't say, oh, it's $20,000 and then go, I made a mistake. Actually, it's 30, because they're like, well, where did that come from?
Is the anchoring when you ask them to size the cost of the problem, or is the anchoring when you give your price?
Both. So I would say I start with anchoring the size of the problem. Most people in organizations often they reduce the scope of the problem. They try and contain it into a box. So if you can try and expand the size of the pie, make the problem bigger, but in bite-sized chunks, and then size that bigger problem, you've got a much higher chance of selling in a bigger program of work in phases.
Yeah, it's fabulous. No, I love it. We're talking the same language. And the thing that I have to teach is sometimes the people that you're talking to are so completely insular and unaware of the overreaching, the higher level, depending on the level that you're talking to. But sometimes they're so blind or they don't know. They simply, honestly, truly don't know. And you have to have some numbers in your back pocket around the industry numbers so that you can go in. So
correct. You have to educate your clients. I've always said our job is to educate our clients about, we had a great phrase, Chala, when I was taught by many, many very experienced partners inside big consulting firms. And they said, it was a really simple turn of phrase. We used to say to clients what we find. You never tell a client, your problem is this, at the beginning of a conversation because they don't know you and they don't trust you. But if you say what we find in your industry is typically there are 3 or 5 big problems at the stage you're at of development. Do any of these kind of resonate? And they'll go, yeah. Number 2. It's number 2. That's my problem.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you tell a client, yeah, I believe you've got problem number 2, is that correct? They're like, well, maybe, depends.
I love it. Okay, so how do you do your marketing to get people in the door at such a high level for such a super niche product or service?
So you have to become a good old trusted advisor. You have to
Okay.
become a thought leader. So I've tried all sorts of things, Chala, in the last kind of like couple of years, all sorts of things. And what I've come down to is, it's referrals. So the first thing is I need amazing client testimonials. So on my LinkedIn profile, I collect recommendations from people that I've coached. I've got some amazing testimonials that have been given freely by my clients saying, you've done an amazing job for me. Thank you. So I'm getting 2 types of recommendation. One is, because remember, I kind of coach and train salespeople within organizations. So the sponsor typically is the sales director, the chief commercial officer, or the chief exec. And then the people that are being trained and coached are the salespeople, account directors. So I get written testimonials on my LinkedIn recommendations from salespeople. That has an amazingly powerful impact because people look at them and go, oh, it's interesting. And then I try and get case studies from the sales director, chief commercial officer, chief exec that says the program of work for our organization did this. So those are the first 2 things.
That's awesome.
And then the third thing is a really simple thing that I'm sure hopefully all of your clients are doing as well, which is on LinkedIn. So if I want to become a thought leader and I've got 20 clients I'm targeting, then obviously I've got them in my sales navigator. So I've got them plugged in. I've got their top 5, top 10 senior people that I'm trying to target. When those people write on LinkedIn a post, I go in and I comment on their post, but I write a meaningful comment, a proper, considered 15-minute meaningful comment. That's the maximum you can put into the comments within posts. And it does 2 things. One, you trickle to the top of the post as a commenter because you've made something meaningful. And the person who wrote the post goes, oh, that was different. Didn't expect that to happen. And it normally is I'd write something that is a little bit more insightful, could be slightly challenging, but definitely not obviously rude or out there, but something specific with my own insights. If I don't have any insights, I don't comment. Because I think just saying great, fantastic, good on you is so pointless. So pointless. Why bother? So that's just like a couple of my kind of marketing tactics. It's a long burn. I've worked out it takes time for people to trust you in a world where, in that simple awareness, consideration, purchase, customer journey, I've got to get them aware of me, and to consider me, they need to have seen my posts. They need to have seen my videos. I do quite a lot of video content now. Video marketing, really powerful now. I write for there's a media company called The Drum, which is aimed at marketing agencies. So they've got over 1 million subscribers. They're all marketing agencies and brands. They're marketeers. So you're all positioned within PepsiCo. And I write a regular column every month in The Drum called Ask the Negotiator.
Nice.
And so I do a video and I do a column and I solve a particular problem each time. So the last one was, when you get ghosted by a client, what do you do?
Perfect.
Little video, little commentary. So yeah, it takes time, I think, Chala. There's no shortcut. It just takes time.
So what I'm hearing is you're mostly doing inbound and not outbound.
Correct.
Reaching
Yeah,
out.
I haven't cracked the outbound problem yet. It's a difficult problem to crack.
Yeah, it is. Well, what you're doing on LinkedIn, I have a team in Kenya doing.
Right.
And they're fabulous. Like it's some sort of tribe that speaks English better than anybody in the country, apparently. So and I don't even know how that works, but I'm just so grateful for them. So we're still perfecting it. I won't lie.
Yes.
I won't lie, but definitely. Yeah. I love all your suggestions. We're like twins.
Exactly.
Different hair.
Different hair.
So what advice do you have for people who are watching this around their marketing?
So one thing, I was talking to a really interesting guy the other day who I'm doing an interview with. I'm doing an interview series currently as well. So I'm doing what I call a Piscari Industry Insights series. I'm picking a whole bunch of interesting people and I'm interviewing them on video. I do like a 20-minute raw video record, and then I cut it down to like 8 minutes, and then I give it to them, and then I publish it as well. I spoke to a really interesting guy the other day who's been in marketing many, many years. We were talking about owning your marketing asset versus renting your marketing asset. And one of the things that came out was, I want to own much more of my marketing asset, in particular, email lists. I want to keep building my own email list of true fans, people that believe in what I do and are interested in what I talk about and have that kind of problem. And one day may buy something, and just keep on building that list, because then I own the asset. So no matter what Google does with the algorithm, I will always have my own assets. That's kind of one thing. And the second thing was, which was really interesting, which came from another marketing person I spoke to. They said the time to use ads in their view was when you found your exact persona, the person that absolutely buys your service. You know their pain points, you know their demographic, you know where they live, you know what role they perform. When you really, really know them and you want to scale sales, by all means, advertising is great because you pour fuel on the fire. But starting with advertising, they're not saying it won't work, but you're going to burn a lot of dollars potentially before you find out.
Yeah.
I thought that was good advice.
It's excellent advice, and ads have not worked for me regardless of how clear my avatar is. So that's just me. But, I'm sort of targeting, maybe not as big as you, but still CEOs. And,
exactly.
It's not just any coach's coach which is like, there's an enormous industry, and my hat's off to them, but that's not who I'm after. And so
exactly.
the CEOs are a lot less on social media. They are a lot less susceptible to advertising. They are not, looking for 9-day live launch challenges. So yeah, it's a different ball game for us, for sure.
It's a different ball game. And I've talked to various people, and I've tried a couple of consultants who've tried to work with me on outbound. And you know what? It's not worked.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're bad. It's just that for my market, for my proposition, I mean, quite often, Chala, mine's it can be a bit of a distressed purchase, because it can be, they only need me when they suddenly face this negotiation with someone that's not playing ball and they're not sure what to do.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like you then pick up the phone.
But you've got to have made that, space in their mind so that you're the first person that pops up when that pain comes in. That's where your branding comes in, and that's where the thought leadership. So
2 weeks ago, I had a client who I spoke to 2 years ago. He's one of my first clients. And he called me. Every 3 months, I email him, say how he is, keep in touch, as you do, try and bring in something new to think about. And he rang me 2 weeks ago. So, Mike, I've got a problem. Can you help? Yeah. And I said, oh, yeah, of course. And we talked it through. And I didn't charge him. It was just a phone conversation. And I said, why did you call me? And he said, because you were front of mind, Mike. Wow. Because when I've got that problem, you're the guy I call.
That's wonderful. So on that note, congratulations on your wonderful being able to stay top of mind. And may I wish that the same to everybody who's watching us and listening to us. And thanks again for being a wonderful guest, Mike.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it, Chala. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.